I'm Tom Drost, president of Logical Engine, creators of EstimateRocket and JobRocket, the service contractor software that manages your projects from lead to paid from anywhere. Today we're going to talk about tips to save time with EstimateRocket. Hopefully everyone will take away at least one time saver that they can use every day to have more time for work or for play. Hopefully some of the things you're already using. But our goal is definitely for you to get be able to get the most out of EstimateRocket. So on your GoToWebinar panel, there should be a question window. So as we go through the process of the webinar, please feel free to type out your questions into that window, and we'll get to those questions probably at the end of the webinar. We'll take some time to answer them. Some of them I may get to during the course of the webinar if they kind of dovetail into what we're talking about. Again, these webinars are all about helping you to get the most from EstimateRocket. So onward with today's topic. I said 5 tips to save time, but of course we've got at least one more than 5. We want to give you a small bonus there. So here's a quick overview of where we're going to go. One of the first areas, big time-saving areas with EstimateRocket, is email templates. So where I'm sure everybody's using email templates, the question is, are you using them often enough? So probably most people are using at least the basic email template that is used to send out an estimate, because that comes up on the default when you go to email something. So one like this basic email template or basic estimate template is the default. And of course there are default emails anytime you're doing manual emails throughout the process. But just as we have this email template here to edit, one thing to take note of that hopefully many of you have seen is that when you're working on a project, I'll just pull up a sample project here, you can, and you go to email someone. If I go down to my email plus, or if I simply use the email option from up above here and say let's email the estimate, you'll see that it comes up with at the top with a template option. So it says I can pick, I don't have to use the default template that shows up. I can go ahead and pick a different template. So number one thing that comes to mind is if you're doing different types of business, you may have different types of emails that you're using for the different types of customers that you have. So you may want to have 3 or 4 different templates that you use even for sending out your initial estimates. Again, time saver, don't be typing the same type of email over and over again when you don't need to. And so if we go take a look at, so in this case if I wanted to, for example, I could say let's do the estimate in email template. So slightly different, this is something where I was probably practicing with someone to design a different type of template where there was more information estimated information right in the email. Again, just lots of options there to how you do it. So in addition to having different types of email templates for your different types of clients, you may also want to have different email templates for many different purposes. So if we go back and look again at the list, you'll see that in addition to the estimate template, we've got an appointment confirmation template, we've got a change order email, we've got some follow-up campaign emails, we've got invoice emails, we've got paint order emails, we've got product literature, project mark complete. So there's templates for all different purposes, and you should definitely flesh out anytime you've sent that, the second time you send an email out, it's time to turn it into a template, because not only you can use that, but other people on your team can use that as well. And again, we're all about looking for ways to save time. Another big use for email templates is things like insurance riders. So you get the deal and the client says, hey, can you send me out your insurance riders? So you can pre-create an email template that already has those documents that you want to send out with your insurance riders attached to the template. And then if you need to, when you're actually using that insurance rider template, you can just uncheck the ones that you might not want to send them. So if you don't want to send them all the riders for that particular insurance document, you can uncheck that. So again, just make things go faster. What else? Disclosures. A lot of times, if you're doing, depending upon the type of work you're doing, you may have some disclosure documents that you need to send out to clients to make sure that they've read and agreed to for, mold remediation or other types of hazardous things that you might be dealing with. And again, as I mentioned earlier, different types of cover emails. If you've got different types of projects that you want to send out and have very different messaging on. Certainly, different email templates are great for that. So just to take a quick second and go in and look at a couple of email templates. So when you're setting up your email templates, be aware that if you go in and look at some of the standard templates, you'll see some kind of interesting little codes in various places through the emails. And these are all tokens, basically, that will supply information from the project when you use this template. And as you're building your email templates, there is a little help link there that will bring you to the email template help page. And as you scroll down on that, it will show you a list of all the different tokens that you have available to you. So when you're building these email templates, again, using these tokens prevents you from having to type a custom email for a user. It gives you the ability to tokenize the email so that when you use this template, it's going to come up with the information from your current project populated, so you won't have to retype everything. So again, very, very powerful concept. You can also do different things in terms of like your subject line. You'll notice we have a pre-built subject line, but you're certainly open to change your subject lines to have whatever text you want included with them. Very powerful concept. You can also, and then you can also have your signature area be populated with tokens as well. So another good area to explore, and the more tokens you use, the more flexible that email will be in terms of use by other team members of yours. So again, ways to save time. Predefine your email templates. Saves a ton of time. And one other really important factor about using the email templates is, in addition to saving you time, it standardizes your communication with your customers. So you don't have everyone communicating in a completely different way, the standard messages or things that you're saying that you really want to be said in a similar way all the time. So that's another side benefit of using, predefining the email templates, because you can build in your tone, your company's tone and method of speaking into those email templates. So in addition to email templates, what goes right along with email templates is automated follow-ups. So when you first get started with EstimateRocket, we give you a couple of automated or follow-up campaigns set up for you that you can use. Those campaigns are all set to manual when you first sign up for EstimateRocket, and we don't have all of them active. So in this particular case, everyone always starts out with a pending acceptance campaign. So this is the one that almost everyone uses. This is the one that once you've sent your proposal out, you want to follow up with the customer every few days to encourage them to go ahead and accept your deal. So great, that most of you, I hope, are using this campaign, and hopefully you've also modified it a little bit to be more of what you want and how you want your messaging to go. But in addition to the pending acceptance campaign, we have a whole other series of campaigns. For example, the next obvious one that you would use is the estimate pending completion. And this campaign fires when the project is scheduled for the estimate. So as soon as you schedule the estimate, this is going to send out the appointment confirmation email. And the 0 days simply means it's going to send it out immediately. So again, big time saver. As soon as you schedule it, bang, it sends out a confirmation for you automatically without any intervention. And of course, the confirmation is customized, to that customer. In this case, our default appointment confirmation email not only, talks to the client, but it also says who's been assigned to go and do the work, and then of course has your signature at the bottom. So follow-up campaign for pending completion, very powerful. Estimate pending schedule. You create a new project, get it in the system. You can have a campaign that goes out that says, hey, thanks for asking for an estimate. We're going to get right back to you and try to schedule our appointment as soon as we can. look forward to speaking with you. That one you might not want to make automatic, because sometimes when you get a lead, you've already talked to the person, so you might not necessarily want that to go out as an automatic one. But remember that any of these can be automatic or manual. And when you set a manual campaign, it simply means, and I'll switch back over to the project, it simply means that you're going to get the opportunity to click the Start Campaign button instead of having it happen automatically. So let me just go to an estimate pending schedule and go into that project. So here, when the campaign is set to manual, it simply means that I have to click the Start Campaign button in order to send out that email. So that just queued up my email, which was a request for an estimate appointment. So again, another follow-up opportunity, and the follow-up opportunities keep going all the way to the end of the project. So once the project is over, you can queue up on project completion. You can have, I believe we start you off with 2 emails in that sequence, but you can certainly expand on that. Many of our customers will send out a follow-up campaign when the project is complete, thanking them for selecting you for business. And asking for either referrals or potentially for a review. So again, all the way along, plenty of opportunities for follow-up campaigns to be used, and really saves you a lot of time. Definitely can't overemphasize the benefits of follow-up campaigns. So that's my first major topic for saving time is email templates and follow-up campaigns. The combination of those two is guaranteed to save you a lot of time. And please don't be afraid to go in and modify the templates to have your own messaging and really portray your company the way you want to be heard. So the next topic that I'm going to touch on is going to be using item list and item groups and item templates. So again, hopefully everybody's at least got some items built in their system. That, again, big time saver. Anytime you're typing stuff repetitively, there's no reason not to create an item for it. So one of the pieces of feedback that I get very frequently is when I suggest that you create an item in your item list that lists all of your standard includes and excludes. I always get a lot of pushback that says, well, every single one of my projects is completely different. Well, I think that is, that's not very accurate. I would suggest that maybe 10% of your includes and excludes are unique on any given project, and that 90% of what you're doing is very similar from project to project. So again, sometimes you're going to have to make changes or delete things that aren't applicable, but in most cases it's going to be very, very similar verbiage on every project that you really need to get included to explain what you're doing. So for example, I've created a couple of items in my item list called interior preparation, for example. So interior preparation, in this case, has got a whole list of details that are the typical interior preparation items. So all furnishings will be covered, walls will be scraped, fill wall and ceiling cracks, apply stain and sealer, etc., etc., etc. So I can add this. I've already put it in a group called Scope of Work. So we've added that. Great. Now all we have to do, and I could have done that before I actually added it to the project, is go back in and say, okay, well maybe some of these don't apply. So in the case where they don't apply, instead of retyping them and respell checking them and re-going through what you've already done 100 times, you can just come in here and say, delete the things that aren't applicable. So I'm going to delete that. Maybe I'm not going to leave you the leftover paint this time, and maybe I'm gonna, and then maybe I have to add something additional, my special item for this project. So we add that back in, we save it. Guarantee that's much faster than typing that from scratch every time, because most of it is the same from project to project. And frankly, most of it should be the same from project to project. Again, it adds consistency in terms of the way you do your work, and makes for a much better presentation to your customer. So a couple things that you'll notice, that item, when it came up, is not showing unit price, quantity, or total. And when we go ahead and preview this, it's going to look nice and clean and expand out that text to fill up the whole space that we have available. So when you use, and the reason it did that automatically is because my group scope of work has been predefined not to have columns turned on. So that's the next step, is once we start using items, we can also define item groups so those groups always look the same. So if I hit my edit group, you'll see we've already got the settings. So we've got no line item prices, unit prices, or quantities, or totals. We are showing a group total, and we're including an estimate. Those aren't necessarily relevant because there aren't any dollar amounts on these, so it really isn't going to matter. But that gives us our nice presentation on our group, and if I need to change it for a particular project, I can always change it now for this project. One caveat, if you click this Save to Item List, if this group has already been used in a previous project and saved, if you click Save to Item List, you're updating the settings in the master item list for this particular group name, scope of work. So you should only use this when you're first creating that group and you want to save those settings, or when you've created it previously but want to adjust the default settings. So if I want to adjust the default settings, maybe I don't want to show group total, and I can save it. And that will affect all future times when you use that scope of work to not include the group total. So again, that's going to change our our global setting, or our default settings for that particular item group. You can make changes to your item groups in the item list, in the settings item list. Under settings item list, you'll probably all see in your settings a list of groups over on the right, and those do get created as they get saved. So I've got, over the time, I've built up quite a list of groups that I've used from time to time that all have the settings that I want in particular for that particular group name. So that again just kind of speeds things up, and you can come in here and make adjustments to them in the settings as well. So if you decide, hey, you know what, on all my epoxy floor coating group items, I always want to show quantities from now on, or at least I want to default to quantities from now on, I can do that here. So that's editing the item groups. Again, saves a little bit of time, because as you're using the same group names over and over again, like work description and scope of work and whatever else you're using for your group names, you don't have to make changes to the settings on the groups every single time. The next thing that you can do with items and item groups is you can add them to item templates. So an item template is simply a group of items that you've added to a template so that you can add them to a project all together and easily. So I'm actually going to get rid of this group that I had on this project. So I'm not going to end up using that one. So once I've created an item template, when you click the Line Item Plus button, you're going to see a list of line item, which is the standard choice, and any other templates that you have as add-on templates, like the interior and exterior paint sections. But you're also going to see any item templates that you've created. So for example, here I've created an interior project template. I've got an interior room template, paint list template, a scope of work template. You can create different templates for whatever purposes you want. So for example, let me go ahead and click on the scope of work template. So what it does, and I'll show you how we set these up in just a moment, but what it does is it brings up a list of all the items that I've added into this particular item template. Now, if the items that are in here are actual products, then this field is the quantity field. So when you create those items, if you create them so that the price that you give those items is a unit price, then all you need to do here is type in the quantity. So if it's square feet or linear feet or just a count, you can just type in those counts, and that's going to become the quantity on those line items. In the case that I have here, I'm really using these items simply as a way to get in the various work scopes or work descriptions that I want to include in this project. So a lot of you I know have over the years built up great descriptions of that are your differentiators for your company that explain how you do things or what you do and your work methods. This is a great way to get those added into a project consistently. So by creating an item template, and I've called it scope of work, but you could call it, call your item template based on what it is. And I can come in here, and any one in this case that I put a number on is going to get added to the project. So in this case, I'm just going to add one of the two called painting contract and save it. And what you're going to see is that I've now added this painting contract line item into the scope of work group that I previously had. Now I may be mixing and matching here and combining things that don't make sense, but just get the idea that we can add these things ad hoc by using these templates. And in this case, this is a whole contract that's gone in as one line item. And when I preview that, again, because we've got our settings done properly, those all become nice, full text blocks as part of our project information or part of our scope of work. So another good example of how to use that, I'm going to get rid of my original one. Another good example of that is to actually add products. So if I go and say line item plus, and I'm going to say that I want to do an interior project. There we go. So my interior project now, in this case, has a couple of scope of work type line items, and then it has some production quantities. So paint walls, 2 coats, 2,000 square feet. Paint ceiling, 1 coat. It's going to be 500 square feet. And paint trim, 1 coat, linear feet is going to be 250 linear feet. And I've got 6 doors and 2 French doors. So each of these items now has been created in this case with a price, a unit price that represents whatever these items are. So when I add them, I'm going to just call this by putting in this name override, it's going to force all of these items into the same group. And that way it won't go on top of my scope of work that I've already got in there. So now by adding those in, you'll see I've got my new scope of work, which is a little redundant, and then I've got all of my paint items. So I've got a description of rooms. This happens to be one methodology for doing it where you'd list out the rooms. And I realize we also have a built-in painting template, but this is just another alternative. And in this case, based on all the quantities that I entered, it's basically priced out this paint job. So again, another way to quickly add items to the project. If you want, you can use this for things that EstimateRocket doesn't have a template for. I have one here, an example one that is for garage flooring or epoxy floor coating. And I've just created items, again, that are based on square footage pricing or per hour pricing, and those will create a set of line items and a full proposal. So now let's go look at how we create an item template. So I'm going to go back over to the settings, and I'm going to go to item templates. Now you do have to create your items first. Before you can add the items to an item template, you do have to create the items in the item list. So in this particular case, here's my item templates that I've created. Here's the interior project that we just looked at. And these are all the items that are on that project. So basically, you add another item, you come in and you hit the plus and you say, let's see, maybe I have, okay, I've got a paint window item. So that would be, we've just added a new item into this where I would, again, fill in a quantity when we actually use this in a proposal and move on. So save that. So another great feature is item templates. They can save you a lot of time and again make your projects more consistent. So when you go to create a proposal, you may start out with an item template that adds in some boilerplate line items that you always use in your presentations to your customers. Very powerful idea. Okay. Next item up on the list. So that covered item list, groups, and item templates. The next item on the list is drag and drop. So there are several places in EstimateRocket where you can use drag and drop to make your life easier. So I'm going to start I happen to be on a project here, so I'm going to start here. So you can do a couple things. Number one, you can drag and drop line items, and you can drag and drop groups. And all of the drag and drop operations do require you to click on the little drag and drop toggle switch. And the reason for that is because if you're on a mobile system, if we enable drag and drop all the time, you wouldn't be able to do anything without dragging and dropping. So this is kind of a requirement of how strong our support is for mobile, that you do need to toggle this on and off to use it. So once I click that, then I'm free to drag and drop. So drag and drop, you can work in two ways. I can drag and drop line items within an item group. So I can move that one down, and I can move this one up, and I'm just clicking and holding and dragging and then letting it go. And then I can also move groups around. So I can drag, for example, I can drag this group up above the other group. And when you get it to where you want it, you just let it go, and that's moved my scope of work group down to the bottom, as you can see here. In fact, I'm going to actually get rid of this one because we don't really need that anymore, but you get the idea. So one thing you can't do is you can't drag items between groups currently. So that causes a little confusion sometimes. And currently, just changing the name of a group will not merge two groups together. So just be aware, if you do need to move an item from one group to another, for example, if I want to move this particular item into the scope of work group, I need to actually change the group name to match the other group. And once I do that, it will in fact drop that down into the scope of work group. So now that's moved down below into the other group. So that causes a little confusion at times. Just wanted to make sure I clear that up. So that's one place you can drag and drop. Next place you can drag and drop is on the dashboard. Now, I know most of us keep up with our projects very, very efficiently, but every now and then we get some that fall into the late tab. So here's another area where drag and drop can be very useful. So I'm actually going to go over to the Future tab, and the Future tab always includes today plus all the future items. So at this point, it's getting late in the day. I'm probably not going to get all these things done. Here's a great place for drag and drop. So when I enable drag and drop, I can just move items into the next day. So I drag it, gives me an opportunity to change it, done. Okay, I'm going to move this, I'm not going to get this work done today, we're going to move that over to the next day, done. You can also simply use it to, if you click on it, if you just start the drag operation and don't know what date you want it on, you can just fill in the appropriate date. So now I can just pick the date and reassign it, and now it's been dropped out to the 31st. So drag and drop, very handy for manipulating and adjusting your schedule. Now it does work on the late tab as well. It's just difficult to drop it on a date. So once you get onto the date tab, you can move it, but you do have to go ahead and manually set the date once you start the dragging operation. It's still a little quicker than pulling up the dialog, than going into the project details, clicking on the schedule, setting the date, and coming back out. So it still works a little faster than that does. Just move it, pick the new date, and set it where you want it, and move on. So that's the second place where drag and drop works. And the third place where drag and drop works is on the schedule screen. So when we're on the schedule screen, if we decide that we're not going to be able to get something done in a given time frame, we basically can just grab that project and drag it. So in this case, it brings up the dialog with a set of dates. I can adjust those dates. In this case, we're going to move that one out to November 20th that's going to go all the way into December 6th. And then, of course, you can leave notes there, and you could reassign it to someone else as well if you need to. And then in the simple case of drag and drop, we can also just grab it and move it to another day. If we can move it exactly to the other day, then it works great and automatically picks up the new dates that we wanted to move it to. In addition to moving scheduled items around on the schedule, you can also schedule items from over in the Pending Schedule tab. So if I want to schedule this project, I can simply drag it onto the calendar. Pulls up the date. It's going to be a 2-day job, and we're scheduled. So we can use the drag and drop for that as well. And then, in here, when we're working on it, we can filter by work order if we want to schedule work orders. So again, I can move my calendar out, look over to November, and I'm going to schedule this project from the 13th to the 24th, and we're done. All right, so that's another place where we can use drag and drop is on the schedule, and to schedule new things and also to reschedule items. So so that definitely, again, another time saver. Hopefully not all of these things we're covering today are new to you. Next thing I wanted to talk briefly about is mapping. So this isn't, necessarily a lifesaver for everybody, but if you're doing one or more appointments during the day and doing a lot of driving around, the mapping feature can be huge. So you're only going to get the mapping option on projects that are just going to move a couple of these into the same day, so that we'll be able to schedule them together. So when you are on the dashboard or on the project screen, you'll see this show map and directions. So show map just pops up a quick map display of where your projects are. And you can click on that. You can drill into the project if you need to. So again, just a quick way to see, visually where your projects are that you're looking at that are scheduled for the day. And the only things that will show on the map are things that have addresses, so work appointments and estimate appointments. The other thing that you can do here is kind of neat is click on the directions button. And as long as you have less than 20 addresses selected, it will actually go to Google Maps and give you directions, optimized directions for all of your appointments. So again, another time saver if you're driving around a lot. We have some customers who do many estimates in a day, and this is a lifesaver. And in fact, they actually use this tool to schedule most of those appointments as well. So mapping, very handy. Directions options, and I did mention that this does work on the project screen as well. So if we jump over to the project screen, you'll see now you may want to narrow it down a little. If I show map with all my projects selected, I'm going to have a pretty big map display. In fact, as you can see, we got projects scheduled all over the country. It's going to be a long day. But more appropriately, we would go and perhaps look at our pending schedule, estimate pending schedule list. And from here I can see where they are on a map, and then potentially drill in and just select certain ones. I could also probably narrow this down to the state of Massachusetts by doing a search. That should help, although Boston, Mass is probably might be a better choice. And then now I've limited it down to my projects that are in Boston, which all probably happen to be roughly the same address. But so some different ways to use the mapping feature. Again, should be a handy way to figure out where you need to go and where you're going. Okay, maps was a quick one. The next one I want to talk about is reports. So hopefully you're using the reporting options. There's some great reports here. And one thing, actually, before I dive totally into reports, is the other time saver is the search bar. And the search bar, everywhere you see a search bar, works very much the same way. You can search on just about anything in the project except line items. So any of the customer information, and that means part of a phone number, part of an address, a zip code, part of an email address, anything you happen to know about the project. Odds are, if you type that in, you're going to find the project you're looking for. So I type in a town name, for example, and I've now limited my list down. As you can see, I'm down to 47 projects that are in the town of Boxford, or that contain Boxford. And then, I add in 5775, and that's going to further limit it down. I happen to know that's the last 4 digits of a phone number I use all the time. So again, really simple. Let's say I'm looking for that project that's on Peach Street. Okay, well, we got a few of them, but at least that quickly narrowed my list down to the ones that are on Peach Street. And that search, anywhere there's a search bar, it works very much the same. So anywhere you see a search bar, you can put in just about any of the project information that you know, and it should limit it down to those items. So when you're on the report screen, so hopefully you've all explored the report screen and you use the report screen to answer your questions. Who owes me money? Oh, that's the open invoices report over here. I want to know, what are my oldest ones that are owed, or my newest ones that are owed, or all of them. I click on a number total, and that shows me all of my open invoices. If I want to get to this easily, or any report easily, you can make a shortcut. So use your shortcuts bar. You'll notice up at the top of the screen I have a couple. I have an overdue. This one actually happens to go to the projects overdue tab. I have a year-to-date report, which is year-to-date sales, and then I have a Nuba report, year-to-date report. So let's click on that. And basically, this particular one has a filter that shows me projects greater than $3,000 or greater than $2,999. And they also only projects that happen to be a Nuba report. So right now I've got my sales in Nuba report that are greater than $3,000. There's 34 of them, totaling a total of $112,252. So once I created the filter and I put in my search criteria, I'm gonna use my favorites button, and I added it to my menu bar, and now I can click on that anytime I want to get to that report. I mentioned a minute ago overdue. So earlier I set up an overdue filter, or excuse me, an overdue shortcut that basically takes me to the dashboard screen and immediately sets me to the late tab and all projects. So again, handy tool. If there's places you want to get quickly and easily, you can use that. You can use the shortcuts button and save yourself shortcuts. Okay, so back to the report screen for a few minutes. So we talked about who owes me money. That's open invoices. Other questions you want to get answered. Hey, what's the value of the work orders that we completed this week? Okay, that's the open work orders report. And how do I know for the week? I would select the view of a week. So I didn't have any completed this week yet. Looks like last week I had a couple. The week before I had none. The week before I had one. So that basically is, how many work orders were done in whatever period I'm looking at. So maybe I want to look at the month. Maybe I want to look at a quarter. This is just, indicators for, what did I complete work for? Well, that's a good indicator of what you might be receiving cash for in the not too distant future. Other questions that we might want to ask ourselves, what are my sales? What are my sales or invoice amount for some period? What's my month-to-date sales for September? Well, I can look at any of the reports that say sales. Sales by source, here's my total, 11,000. Sales by estimator, here's my total, 11,000. So any of the reports that say sales, that represents invoiced amounts. Next question, how do I know how many projects got accepted? Well, that's the accepted estimates report. Right here shows me not only the total of what got accepted in the month of September, but it also shows me who the estimator was on those particular projects. So again, quick answers to your questions. Estimates completed versus sent. Okay, I don't have a single report for that, but it's pretty easy to find. Actually, excuse me, estimates completed are here. That's how many things got completed and sent out to the customers. That we do know. So during this month or this week. So if you want to see, what are my sales guys doing? What did they do this week? Well, looks like we only got 2 estimates out for $3,000. That's probably not going to pay the bills. And last week we did 3 estimates for a total of 9,000. So again, that's a good indicator of what you've got in your has newly arrived in your open estimates queue. And then advertising effectiveness. So that's one of my favorite reports. Is we can look at the sales by source report up at the top corner, and we can look at the new projects by source. So within this same time period, I got 11 new projects worth about $40,000, and I sold 6 projects for $11,000. And this identifies the lead sources. So 2 of them were for Angie's List that I sold, and only 1 of the new projects was from Angie's List. So again, these are projects that were created in this time period. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a 1-for-1 match. It's just an indicator of how many new ones we got from that source versus how many we sold from that source. So again, very important information for managing your business. Final question that you might want to get answered is closing ratio or closing rate. So closing rate is accepted estimates divided by estimates completed. Or depending upon how you like to look at things, it's completed estimates versus sales. It really depends, that analysis, which ones you compare, are really going to depend upon the length, the duration of your average sale. If you have longer term projects, then you may want to compare accepted to completed or estimates completed. And if you have shorter duration projects, you may want to compare accepted to sold. Your choice. So just wanted to show you there's some quick, easy things you can do for reporting to save you time when you're looking for numbers. The numbers are all here. We've got some real exciting plans coming up for some additional things that we're going to be doing from a reporting standpoint that'll make it even better. Final automation tool, one I can tell you about and not necessarily show you today, is automations using Zapier. So we have an integration, API integration to Zapier, which simply means we have the ability to send some information out to other places, and we have the ability to receive some information coming from other sources. So what does that mean to you? Well, one great example is that if you're using a product like You Can Book Me or Calendly, you can have the client fill out a form on your website and have it automatically create a project in EstimateRocket for you. You can actually do an integration with Angie's List using Zapier as well. If you're an Angie's List customer, Angie's List has an API that you can hook into Zapier as well. So very powerful. You can also, for example, if you like to do a lot of bulk emailing, you can have every new client be sent into MailChimp or into Constant Contact or some other bulk mailing application. You can also automatically create invoices and payments in your online accounting systems with Zapier. So a whole bunch of interesting opportunities with Zapier, again, to save you time, to integrate to other things, to reduce duplicate entry, and to save you time and make your life more enjoyable. So those are my topics for today. Hope everybody enjoyed the webinar, and certainly look forward to seeing you at the next one. We do have some questions. I'm going to take a look at the questions now, and we'll go back through and I'll try to give some answers to your questions. So let's see here. Doesn't show me much of these when I'm reading them, so give me a second. If we have an automatic campaign and it's set at 2, 7, and 14 days for pending acceptance, will the email stop once we have accepted the work? Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of the automated campaigns. As soon as you advance the project to the next step, so as soon as you hit the green button, it will delete any remaining emails from the previous campaign. So it makes it very easy that you can, as long as you're keeping up with your projects when they get accepted, and on any of the campaigns that are sending multiple emails, as long as you're keeping up with your projects, it makes it extremely easy to use them because they'll automatically stop once you've done the first one. Excuse me, once you've advanced the project to the next step. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, next question. How do I add tax into my items and see that in my proposal? So there is, when you're creating an item in the item list, actually you just go to another tab, there is a tax flag. So I'm just going to pull up a random item here. There is a taxable flag. So any item that you need to be taxable, first you need to set the taxable flag on that item. So that's step number one. The second step is on the individual projects, you also need to set a tax rate. So I'm just going to go into a project here, and in the original project settings, you'll notice there's a tax line that says either select tax authority or to enter a tax rate. So you have to enter the tax rate into your project as well. Once you've done that, then any items that are set as taxable will get that tax rate applied to that total. So that's how you apply taxes, sales taxes into your projects. Let's see, next question. How do you get the quantity of one to always appear when you open the template? Good question. So when you're in the item template, when you're editing it, you can set a default quantity in the template. So if you always want that item to default to a certain quantity, you simply set that quantity when you editing the template. So on these first two, which are kind of my scope of work items, I have them both set to 1, but on all of the items that represent the actual work, I don't have any quantities in there because those will be filled in when the template is being used. All right, next question. Next question was iPad app, load pictures and estimates straight to Dropbox. We don't currently have a feature to do that. We are looking at exploring being able to load multiple pictures at once into EstimateRocket. I'm not sure if this is capable, if this is possible in Dropbox, but you might be able to send to email into a Dropbox account, although I'm not positive if that is available. I'm going to look into that actually, because that might be a good solution, because then you could simply email the PDF to your Dropbox account if that's how you wanted to store it. But I don't have a way to do that, do that immediately for you. Zapier might also be a tool to do that. Joseph, if you want to follow up with me later, through the in-app chat, we can probably get into more. We can explore a little bit more what you're trying to accomplish with that. It might be helpful. Next question: tax on a proposal. So, once you get the tax onto the project, then any taxes on the project should end up on the proposal as well. So, Rod, if that's not working for you, again, that might be one to, hit us with the in-app chat and let us know that you're having a problem with that, and we can address that offline and help you out with that. Okay, how to look at the sales ratio. So yeah, in terms of the reports, looking at the sales ratio. So generally speaking, I've asked different sources, and again, it depends upon what you want to consider. But generally speaking, the closing rate would be calculated as the completed estimates or the accepted estimates divided by the completed estimates. So how many estimates did I do versus how many estimates got accepted. Now, some people will do the number of projects versus the accepted estimates. Again, there's different ways to look at it depending upon your operation. And then finally, some people look at the sales versus the completed estimates as the benchmark, or the sales versus the new projects as the benchmark. There are definitely different ways to calculate that. And it depends upon what you want to use as a benchmark. The most important thing is to be consistent, because the whole concept of closing rate is whatever you come up with as your number, as long as you consistently use that from month to month, then it's going to be a meaningful benchmark for you. Somebody might argue one way or the other that their rate looks better if you compare completed estimates to accepted estimates. And the idea there being, if it never got to the point where the estimate got scheduled, then do you count that against the estimator? There's definitely a school of thought that would say, no, if we can't even get an estimate scheduled, then I'm not going to count that against the estimator. That might be a question of comparing your leads, your number of new projects, to your sales, because certainly that would give you an indicator of how many of my initial leads turn into sales. That rate is probably going to be different than the rate of estimates that you do that turn into sales. Hopefully by the time you do the estimate, you have a higher closing rate of ones that you've actually done estimates on than ones that were just raw leads into your company. So hope that answers that question. Next question: can you send me or import your templates into my program so that I can tweak them and use? Bonnie, you might want to just contact me offline about that one. You know, I can certainly help you with some of those things and help you along the way in getting those set up. Part of it is definitely, you know, how you want your projects to look. So it's definitely a combination. Like you said, you could tweak some of those when you're done. I have kind of a cross section of things here. Nothing that's, you know, really formal, because a lot of what I show here are things that have kind of been you know, initially put in and changed along the way. So you would definitely have to, you know, thoroughly review any of those things to make sure that they're still completely applicable. Next question. Is there any way other than the manual way to stop the campaign after the customer has responded? Yeah, so again, if you've got a campaign that's active, basically advancing the project to the next stop will stop the campaign. So those are the two ways to make it happen. If you're using the new online acceptance feature, the customer portal, as soon as the customer accepts, we don't mark the project as accept work, but we do cancel the campaign. So even if you don't get back to that project to accept it, we do cancel that campaign currently, because that, you know, sometimes you don't get to that for a day if they've signed it online, because you know, they do it at night. We don't want that additional email to go out if it happens to be scheduled to go out that same night or afternoon or whatever. Okay, I think I got a record of questions today. This is great. Let's see. When I enter schedule estimate in the search from the dashboard, it's not working. So Randy, I might have to take that one offline, because I might have to experiment with that a little bit. So that, okay, I think the problem might be that what you're really looking, you need to do that on the projects page. So from the projects page, I can look at pending schedule. This, I will admit, isn't going to necessarily help you get at the late ones, but you know, this does limit it down to those ones that need to be scheduled. So that might be one we might want to have a chat about. You know, this particular spot. So if I do want to get to this quickly, I can go down to estimates pending schedule. There might be a filter we could use in here as well, but I don't think I currently have the assignment date in here to use as a filter. So that might be about as close as I can get, is to just quickly get to the pending schedule tab, and the dates that you see here are an indicator of when it was due. So, and in my system, I've got lots of stuff that's really pretty ancient. Hopefully yours aren't as late as mine. And I could go to the late tab for that as well. So if I make a shortcut out of this, this is going to be pending schedule late. Let's see how that works. And I'll put that on my bookmark bar. And there's my new one. So let's just go back to the dashboard. So now I should be able to click on the pending schedule late. And that brings me to my late estimates pending schedule. So I think that will work. If you get here, get to your projects tab, go to pending schedule and click the late tab, and then save your favorite. All right, next question. We use Google Drive for pictures versus Dropbox. Yeah, we don't really, currently all of the pictures end up in EstimateRocket. Now, I do know, you know, and I definitely can understand potentially how you want to use that. That might be something that'd be good to talk offline about, Bonnie, just to see how you're using that, so we can get some ideas on what might make sense to you know, might help to make EstimateRocket better in that respect. Next one. In order. Yeah, I think Rod, that would be the question is how to create an item list in order to get the measure, for a kitchen countertop as an example. That's definitely one we can kind of take offline, but it's a similar process to what we looked at here, where you're going to create an item for kitchen countertop and maybe have a unit price that's based on square foot, but you might need 10 different kitchen countertop items that represent the different grades of countertop that you're putting in. So yeah, and then you could have an item template that had all those, and you could fill in the quantity of square feet into the one that they selected, the good, better, best, or whatever that whatever that item was that they wanted to quote on, or multiples potentially. Can we create a favorite button with the campaigns that are scheduled? Yeah. So the question is, can we do a favorites button for campaigns that are scheduled? So on the follow-up, if you go to the settings follow-ups page, there is a link out on the right here that tells you that basically tells you what gives you a list of the projects that are pending acceptance. So if I go to this report and I save my shortcut to my bookmarks bar, so this is my pending campaign. So that's my pending campaign. We'll put that in there, and so we can jump back to our pending schedule lates. Yep, we got those, and our pending campaign. So these are all the projects that have the pending acceptance campaign somewhere in progress. Hope that. And if any of these, on any of these, if I don't fully answer the questions, please feel free to get back to me. I'm kind of reading through the list as we go, and as I mentioned, this is I think is the biggest list I've ever had, which is great. I'm very happy. Let's see. So next question, how do I get my signature permanently into each estimate? Right now I put in when it's, yeah, so there's, what you need to do is that there's not a real super easy way to do that, but if you contact us, use the in-app chat and let us know what you're trying to do with that. If you can send us an image of your signature, we can get that uploaded, and then you'll be able to access it just on your projects and have that automatically appear on your estimates, on your proposals. Next question, if you need to revise an estimate, is there a way to get a new estimate number so you can save the old one? So there isn't a way currently to get a new estimate number without actually creating a new project, but the way that the proposal system now works is once you create a proposal, it does make a snapshot of what the proposal looked like at that point in time. And if you don't delete that one stay, and then you create another proposal, the old proposal will still be around, and it'll be indicated as rejected or rejected or canceled. I can't remember which, but it'll still be there. So you can actually go back and reference what the old proposal looked like versus what the new proposal you've created looked like. Not sure if that answers the question or not, but you definitely do have the availability of that. Some people, if the proposal hasn't been accepted, some people like to delete it and then create a new one and send it out. But you can certainly, if you just create another proposal, it will mark the old existing proposal as canceled, and then allow you to have a new proposal, both of which will be available for viewing. So either one of those options is definitely available to you. And hopefully that answers that question. Okay, next question. So next question is a good one. So what is searched when you enter stuff into the search bar? What is being searched? So it's not and the question was, is it just the client info? It's all of the client info. It's also all of the general project information. So it's if the project address, for example, is different than the client address, it will give you access to either one of those. So it's basically searching anything that's in the project information in the internal notes, in the notes, or any of the other fields, the phone numbers, the addresses, and those pieces of information. All right, I think we got, the last question is thanks. I think we made it through the list. Any other questions? All right, well, I certainly appreciate everybody attending today. I'd like to thank everyone again, and look forward to seeing you at the next Success webinar. And if you do have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always use the in-app chat or give us a call, whichever makes sense. And we're here to help. And we look forward to your success with EstimateRocket. Thanks again, and have a great afternoon.